And so on the 2nd of June 2015, Nigerians woke up to the news of a suit filed at the Federal High Court in Ibadan, Oyo State, that's in the southwest region of Nigeria, a case brought against 6 officials of Nigeria's central bank and 16 other officials from a cross-section of Nigeria's commercial banks. They were to face trial for an alleged fraud amounting to 8 billion naira, and that introduced us to the word bricketing. Well, hello and welcome. This is 60 Minutes with me, Angela Jitumobi. Thank you for joining me on the program today. Now, these suspects, according to Nigeria's Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, in a notice issued by Wilson Uwajure, its head of media and publicity, said that suspects were drawn from various business units of the Central Bank of Nigeria across the nation. This fraud apparently partly caused the failure of the federal government's monetary policy over the years, especially when currency mop-up exercises failed to check the pressure of inflation on the economy. And that's where my host today comes in. He's our regular consultant on banking and business matters, a former Chief Compliance Officer with Ecobank Nigeria PLC. Together, we'll be looking at this issue of bricketing. Nigerians are worried that perhaps this has been going on for so long and Nigerians never knew about this. So, join me after the break as I count down 60 minutes with Femi Oyenuga, a former Chief Compliance Officer with Ecobank Nigeria PLC. So what is 60 Minutes with Angela all about? It's not an interview. I like to think it's a conversation between two people making the news, people who are in the news, and those who become the news. And the whole idea is to inform, to educate, or to clarify, as the case may be. It is an art getting people to answer the questions that everyone is thinking in their minds. And that's what we try to do on 60 Minutes with Angela. I ask all the questions that everyone's thinking about and no one wants to voice. All the questions you always wanted to ask, you get those answers on 60 Minutes with Angela. Every week on this station, 60 Minutes with Angela, getting answers to every question you always wanted to ask. Welcome back. Welcome, Mr. Oyenuga. Thank you very much for coming back on the program.
Thank you very much, Angela.
Okay, so, I know you've been following that story of this 8 billion naira fraud in the CBN. Of course, we know that the case is in court, but I thought we should look at, the whole issue of bricketing itself, because I found out that the central bank routinely conducts banks' cash destruction activities. What does that mean to the layman?
Okay, bricketing literally means the compressing of combustible biomass materials in preparation for either burning or lighting up fires. But in this context, we're talking about the act of central bank through the commercial banks gathering the mutilated notes for destruction, for ultimate destruction.
Right.
And then I'll take you through the process.
Right. Because when we have a torn note, people say, take it to the bank.
Yes.
I'm assuming now that at the end of the day, the bank will have a lot of torn notes brought in by different people. What happens once the bank has a collection of torn, mutilated notes?
First of all, the banks are divided into zones. The zones are aligned with the zoning of central banks as well, such that once these mutilated or torn notes are collected across the counter. The banks usually sort them by the good notes and the torn notes. The torn notes will be boxed.
Right.
There is a quantity that must be achieved before movement from the branch to the processing center
That is the regional processing center
of the commercial banks, because the bank, the mutilated notes don't move directly from the branches to the central bank. No.
Okay.
They move to a processing center called cash. Some people call it cash processing center. Some call it cash management center, depending on the bank.
Okay.
It's a collection center for all the branches
In a region.
in the region.
Okay, so let me just stop you there because I want people to follow this story very well. What you're telling us now is that a bank such as EcoBank or First Bank, the way they are spread all over Nigeria, they're still grouped in regions.
Yes.
Okay, so when you collect mutilated notes, say a branch on Lagos Island, that will be gathered with other branches in the, let's say, southwest region of EcoBank. They will all be gathered together there under that region.
The cash processing
Center of,
yes,
of EcoBank in that region.
Exactly. But they don't move the boxes until they achieve the fullness. If it's not complete, they might call from mutilated cash note from other branches to complete a box.
Why?
Before moving.
Why?
It is part of the procedure that you cannot move half-filled
A
boxes
box.
to the processing zones.
Okay.
So once these boxes get to the CPCs
Yes.
or the CMCs,
Yes.
they now box them and batch them for onward forwarding to the central bank, the zonal central bank in this case.
How much fills a box?
I can't tell precisely, but I know for a box of 1,000
1,000 naira notes.
1,000 denomination,
Yes.
we can have about 10 million
In a box.
in a box.
Okay, so the 1,000 naira note, to fill that box to the level to which it will now be transferred from the cash processing center
Yes,
to
the
the
central bank, zonal central bank.
of the region.
Yes.
At least for the 1,000, we know it's 10 million in
10
a
million
box.
in a box.
Okay, and 1,000 is our highest.
Denomination.
Okay, so it moves from there to the CBN's regional center.
Exactly. First of all, let me take you a little bit back. Just for the knowledge sake of our viewers.
Yes.
Central bank is a banker to commercial banks.
Right. Just the
Just
way
like
that we are.
Also, commercial banks are our bankers.
Right.
Now, these banks,
Yes.
when they operate, they do normal, just like we do, normal deposit and
Withdrawal from central
from
bank.
central bank. So I want to take you back a little so that we can really understand
What is going on. Okay, so every bank that we bank with also has a bank account with central bank.
That's
They
correct.
can withdraw,
and
they can
deposit.
okay.
They also have checkbooks, just like we have checkbooks.
Right.
They can draw the check to make withdrawal. They also can fill in
a deposit
form to make deposits
Right.
at the central bank. Now, this deposit is what we are going to talk about.
Yes.
When they are depositing, it could be sound notes, it could be mutilated notes.
Will it be the same value?
It's the same value. As a matter of fact, when they are depositing mutilated notes, they
Yes.
are taking value for the exact amount of destroyable notes that they are giving to the central bank.
Okay.
So they are going to get the credit. For example, assuming a box of 1,000 naira contains 10 million,
Yes.
and we are sending 50 of such boxes
Yes.
to the central bank. That is
500
500 million.
Yes.
So the bank is going to take value. It's going to get a credit of 500 million in its account with central bank for the 10 boxes of
Mutilated
notes that were taken for destruction.
Okay. Will it be the same numbers on the notes? Like the numbers on the mutilated notes, is it true that that number will come back on another money later?
Yes, because that's why
So money never really dies.
money never really dies.
That number
is unique. That number is
on
unique.
the note.
On the note is unique. And that's why if you want to buy something ordinarily at the market,
Yes.
no matter how torn or mutilated note is,
Yes.
they will still insist on seeing the number. Even when you take that note to the bank,
Yes.
they insist on seeing the number, because that number is reusable.
Right. So no note dies.
No note dies.
So you get to central bank, you have two sets of boxes. The ones that are good,
they take value. The mutilated notes too also
take value.
Yes.
This is interesting.
Yeah.
And then what happens from then?
That takes us to the SLA the banks have with the central bank.
Okay, what is an SLA?
Service level agreement.
Okay, service level agreement.
That's the kind of convention, that covenant, the kind of
contract they have.
Okay. Among themselves. Because don't forget that those mutilated notes are very difficult to count, either physically or by the use of machine.
Yes, it's very difficult.
Very difficult.
Yes.
They were never counted on deposits on the day they deposit them at the central bank. The subject to count agreement, just like the banks also have with their big time cash customers.
Yes, depositors.
That you deposit your cash, and then when they are ready to count your cash, you seal it, go away with your keys.
Yes.
And then when they are ready to count, you come back on the day of the appointed date.
And they come and count.
Right in presence of the bank officials, and then they will count. So the same thing, the same system is what operates between the banks and the central bank. Cash counting team.
Okay, so let's just pause there again. On the day you are depositing these boxes at the central bank regional center, they don't count it.
They don't usually count it.
They don't usually count it. But the boxes will be sealed.
Yes.
And you know, as a customer of the central bank, that you will be required to come back at some later date.
Exactly.
For counting.
For counting.
All
exactly.
Right. Okay.
Again, there is a control issue at that point, because you discover that some cash stay in there for as long as 6 months, 1 year, even 2 years in some cases.
Without counting.
Without counting.
But the bank has got the value.
The bank has got the value. Now there's a risk of exposure there. If I come back,
yes,
because I have an agreement that if your money is short, I will have to reverse the credit to your account and repost the exact amount that we
both agreed upon now. Yes.
Now, yes. So the loss has to be borne by somebody.
Who normally bears the loss?
Okay.
The commercial bank.
The commercial bank. Just like the customer bears the loss
when you don't. Yes.
Agreement.
Okay. Already now I can see a loophole. But what you're telling me now is that there isn't really a loophole, because if the money is found to be short or shorter than the credit the bank was given, there is recourse to the law. Somebody will pay for it.
Yes.
Somebody will pay for it. Okay, so what happens next?
After the money has been counted,
yes,
it has become the full custody of the central bank now.
Right.
And then that is when the
bricketing panel
now takes over, and they now set up an appointed date for destruction of these notes.
Right. So I think we should talk about the bricketing panel. How do you get to be a member of the bricketing panel? Because some bankers said to me, that's a juicy post. And I thought even in banking, you have juicy posts. I thought it was only in politics. How does anyone get to be a member of the bricketing panel?
Angela, that's a tough one for me, because I think this is a decision strictly made by the central bank.
Right.
And I never had the opportunity of working for the central bank.
Okay.
But I believe this must be people that have been thought to be of proven integrity, long-standing staff
of banks,
of clean records, of experience, high experience. I don't know, because I don't really know much about this panel. This panel of
bricketing
panel.
Okay, so the panel meets and decides that on this day we will destroy the notes.
Exactly.
Because the bank has already got value for those notes.
Yes.
So the mutilated notes must definitely be destroyed.
Yes.
What happens if they're not destroyed? But don't answer. We'll take a break now. Okay. When we come back, we'll take it from that point. I'm thinking now, could we have value created in two places if those notes are not destroyed? I think that's where the problem lies. Okay. Join us again after the break.
It is difficult to respond to that question.
Angela, that's a great question.
Great question, Angela.
Angela, that is a very great question.
That's a great question.
That's a great question.
Yeah, very good question.
That's a good question.
This is an interesting question you put.
60 Minutes with Angela. Again, answers to every question you always wanted to ask.
Who knows Abi better thing? Abi who no like better thing? All these fine things where they see so. Now money government they take do now. Abi, I saying it's like, I mean, excuse me, I dey pay my tax. I dey do it thing, I dey pay my tax. Say you don't pay your own tax. Have you pay your tax?
Pay your tax. It's your civic responsibility. It's your duty. It's the law.
Welcome back. If you've just joined us, it's 60 Minutes with me, Angela Jitumobi. On my hot seat today, Femi Oyenuga is a former Chief Compliance Officer with Ecobank Nigeria PLC and our regular consultant on banking matters. Now, something that just occurred to me, Mr. Oyenuga, in moving all that money, you move it from the branches to the regional center of the branch before you move it to the regional center of the CBN. How is the money moved? Because if it's mutilated, do they have to have security moving it?
Money, because of its sensitive nature, has to be constantly under dual custodianship.
What do you mean dual custodianship?
There must be at least two people, two members of staff will be directly responsible for the movement of the cash.
Right.
From any point to any other point. Now, we're talking about moving the mutilated note from the bank branches to the processing zone and then to the central bank. All through, there must be minimum of two custodians of this cash that we ensure that the box is firmly locked. Apart from these two bank staff, there are other auxiliary staff. In fact, we usually have bullion team. The bullion team will consist of the cash officer, the custodians, police escorts. So
the money doesn't leave their sight?
No.
Can one person open the box?
No.
Two people?
Two people, minimum. And it has to be opened in the presence of other witnesses.
Okay, so if two people minimum, you and I have the key, we can't open it by ourselves here.
Going by the policy, the bank policy,
yes,
we cannot open it without the witness. We should not be able to open it, but anything can happen.
Okay. Anything can happen, especially if we both agree.
Of course, any tight control, I repeat, can always be broken if there are compromise and agreements among the people. So there's no foolproof control if two people decide to collude.
Okay, so because that's what I'm thinking about now, that when I read that story, the 6 CBN officials, the 16 officials, I thought with what you've explained so far, I mean, we've got to the stage now where the bricketing panel is deciding on a date to destroy these notes. The notes have never been alone from the point of gathering at the banks initially. It appears to me that if anything funny will happen, everybody has to be in on it. One person cannot do anything funny or criminal or fraudulent within the process that you have explained.
It takes two to tango. So we don't know at what point the collusion or the connivance happened.
Yes.
Could it be at the CMC point of the banks or at the cash deposit center of the central bank?
Okay.
Or after clearance of the mutilated notes between the cash deposit center and the cash social center?
Because I imagine that if you deposit to the CBN the mutilated notes, what you're saying is you get on a queue, they will give you a date to come for counting.
Sure.
So even if any deceptions have occurred at all the different stages, there are checks and balances at every stage to detect that, number one, the actual notes that have been declared as mutilated are actually the mutilated notes, and that the value given for the notes is the value received in the mutilated notes. Because if all the notes are the same size, how do you know if I did give a 1,000 note, I gave a 50 naira note? Where will that be detected?
At the point of counting and at the point of destruction, this will come to light. But don't forget,
Yes.
I think I mentioned it before,
Yes.
that the banks usually leave the boxes until they have enough to fill up the box, which will be transferred.
Okay.
And even when the boxes are filled up, it is not that same day that the boxes of mutilated notes will be transferred to the central bank. It stays there for a long time.
Right.
So between that time, anything could happen. Don't forget that even though there are dual custody of getting into the strong room
Yes.
or the vault, they are human beings.
Yes.
Or at the point of counting.
When they
When they bring it, when they open the boxes,
Yes.
the CBN officials and the bank officials, when they open it and they usually, normally it should be detected at that point.
Okay.
And then when they want to destroy, it should be detected.
Okay. But assuming, without conceding now, that yes, the bricketing panel has, the CBN has received the notes, they have counted, they have verified. The bricketing panel now is the one, it has reached the stage of the bricketing panel deciding on the date. That's a lot of trust to put in a panel. Are we saying that at that stage of the bricketing panel, there can be no collusion to swap mutilated notes with any other form of cut papers, for instance?
Anything is possible. So long as there are human beings that will carry out the operations,
Yes.
you can't rule out any possibility.
But-
because I understand that in some of those bundles of mutilated notes,
Yes.
there were newspaper cuttings
Okay, newspapers cut to the size of notes.
of notes in it.
Yes.
They were swapped with the
Real
With the
notes.
real notes.
But why will, I'm just thinking, if we are submitting mutilated notes because it's not been accepted, by retailers and so on, how are they spending the mutilated notes? How do they spend it? I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. If you go to a supermarket or go to the market, you try to spend a ton note, they won't accept it from you. So how can you take 10 million naira worth of ton notes and spend it?
Honestly, Angela, I think the people involved should be able to explain what they did at this point.
Yes.
But I know that anything is possible so long as there will be human beings that will operate within this financial.
Yes.
Don't forget that the mutilated note could just be a question of passing entries somewhere within the system. I don't know.
Yes.
I've never been involved in what they do.
Yes.
But I believe that everything is possible. Let's leave it like that.
Okay. So they may not really be that mutilated, the notes.
Yes.
In other words, we can
And then,
safely say,
since it's a syndicate,
yes.
there could be other means of getting this mutilated reintroduced into the banks and then being swapped for, and being recirculated. I don't know.
Yes.
I don't want to go into that area.
Yes. Okay. So, but now the panel has sat and says we will destroy the notes. How are the notes destroyed?
That I have not witnessed too. So
Okay.
I've never witnessed the destruction
Of the notes,
system,
but we know they are destroyed.
they are destroyed.
Let's talk about the inflation aspect of it, because in my introduction I said this fraud was partly caused failure of federal government's monetary policy over the years. And, I'm just trying to be very basic in the explanation now. I'm imagining that, of course, if 8 billion is submitted for destruction, but a bank has received 8 billion back in value, it must be really bad for the economy if the 8 billion mutilated value still comes back into the economy, because that is what is happening in effect.
Exactly. And that brings us to the question of cashless economy, cashless situation. And even the Anti-Money Laundering Act, the section 1 of that act states that there should be no financial transaction be taking place without using the banks. I don't know for how much now. There's a threshold for individual and corporate entities. But the first section of the anti-money laundering was very specific, focused on the fact that they must use
the banks
for
transactions. The first section of the anti-money laundering law says all transactions in money
must pass through the banks, must pass through the financial institutions.
So you and I want to do business together that involves money.
Up to a certain threshold, I've forgotten the threshold now. I think for individuals, it was reviewed from 500 to, I think, to 1 or 2 million.
Okay.
And then
for corporate
5 million.
Okay. Let's assume the threshold is 1 million.
Yes.
We're not allowed to do business in cash between ourselves.
It's illegal. But people flout that every day.
Because if both of us agree, that we will use cash, who will catch us?
Nobody. It happens, you go to Alaba market, you go to the market, people carry, Ghana must go back to buy things, and but it's illegal. You can't even sell your old car to me for 1.5 million or 2 million, and I pay you cash. It's illegal.
By the law.
By the law. So in essence, if Nigerians actually keep to that law, you discover that there will be less mutilated notes in circulation because a lot of transactions will be done using bank instruments.
That could be one of the major advantages of having a cashless economy. We won't have mutilated notes that will need destruction by briquetting.
Volume.
Yes.
We will always have mutilated notes.
Right.
But we won't have as much as 8 billion. That's too much. 8
billion naira worth of mutilated notes. So, I've watched a film before with Queen Latifah. I don't know if you've ever watched that film. 3 women working at the mint. And it was also about these notes for destruction. And one of them, who had been working there the longest, the oldest woman, had found the perfect method to take out this money. It had never been done. Even though it was a film, my mind kept going to that movie, and I thought, how do we know that this thing hasn't been going on for a while? Because if it is a conspiracy among at least 15 people, unless one person is dissatisfied, perhaps with the sharing formula or with what he or she has ended up with, and blown the whistle, so to speak, on this, we will never have known that this kind of thing is possible.
Once there is an agreement among 2 or more people, anything can happen. This could go on forever unnoticed.
Yes.
Again, that is the essence of whistleblowing, which I encourage corporate entities to institute in their various places.
Yes.
Because without whistleblowing, this kind of thing wouldn't have come to the open. According to the news,
yes,
it's been going on for ages, if not for decades.
Yes.
So except, like I said, if there is a shortchanging among the culprits,
yes,
then that could lead to dissatisfaction, and they will expose themselves.
Yes.
Apart from that, the only thing is whistleblowing. If none of those happens, and that is not to say that we don't have adequate control. After all, we have CCTVs in different places at the central bank, at the banks, at the CPCs.
Yes.
We have dual custodianship agreement. We have subject. I think at a point, the banks and the central bank agree that all these notes should be pasted on cardboard before being put in the boxes.
Right.
This is to ensure that nobody puts in
newspaper or ordinary paper,
or even the notes of the smaller denomination, because that's another
thing. Is that what they call interfacing? Yes. They say swapping a 1,000 naira note with 20 naira notes.
Exactly, because they don't carry the same value. Like I said before, 1,000 naira, a box of 1,000 naira is 10 million.
Yes.
So if you swap that with say 75% of that contains 20 naira notes,
yes,
you know the value of what you are going to get.
And that, that is a real risk, because even sometimes you get bundles of money from people, and inside the bundle of 500 there's 100 naira there in it.
So if this thing happens, it happens a lot and they go undetected.
Okay. What will happen you know, speaking hypothetically now, because they say 16 members of staff from commercial banks across. This whole process you've explained to me seems to me to be more focused on the central bank. Why will the members of the banks be involved in it? It is at the end with the central bank, they count the money in the boxes. What will be the offense of everybody up to that point?
I don't really know what must have transpired
Yes.
at that point, but hypothetically, like you said,
Yes.
the process is an interwoven arrangement between the bankers and the central bankers. So it's difficult for us to know, to determine at what point the fraud occurred.
Right. And by the fraud occurring, we mean at what point did either they swapped for a lower denomination
Exactly.
or for newspapers?
Exactly. Don't
or
forget I said before that these boxes of turned notes
Yes.
will stay in the bank's vault, I mean the commercial bank's vault, or their CPCs,
Yes.
or CMCs, whatever they call it, for months
while they are filling it up.
while they are filling it up. Even when filled up, they may not necessarily take it that same day. They might even have to wait for other branches to bring their boxes and then move in a bullion arrangement to the central bank.
Yes.
So it invariably, the boxes will stay there for God knows how many months.
There.
And then in between the waiting period, anything could happen. As you can see, it is not only limited to the central bank staff.
Yes.
It could happen at the commercial bank
Collation center. Or the,
collation center.
Yes. Okay. And, you know, we had you on the program earlier on to talk about the BVN, but we'll take another break now. When we come back, I want to ask how far it has gone. I thought the deadline was June 1, but I don't know if that has been extended. So we'll talk about the BVN when we come back. Okay. Join us again after the break. So what is 60 Minutes with Angela all about? It's not an interview. I like to think it's a conversation between two people making the news, people who are in the news, and those who become the news. And the whole idea is to inform, to educate, or to clarify, as the case may be. It is an art getting people to answer the questions that everyone is thinking in their minds. And that's what we try to do on 60 Minutes with Angela. I ask all the questions that everyone's thinking about and no one wants to voice. All the questions you always wanted to ask. You get those answers on 60 Minutes with Angela. Every week on this station, 60 Minutes with Angela, getting answers to every question you always wanted to ask.
Who knows a bit better thing? Abi who no like better thing? All these fine things wey dey see so. Na money government dey take do am now. Abi, it's like, you know, I mean, excuse me, I dey pay my tax. I dey do wetin? I dey pay my tax. Say you don't pay your own tax. Have you pay your tax?
Pay your tax. It's your civic responsibility. It's your duty. It's the law.
Welcome back. My concluding moments now with Femi Oyenuga. Okay, so on a final note with this bricketing thing, this particular case is in Ibadan. You've explained that the CBN is all over Nigeria, like in zones. This is the Ibadan zone. Is bricketing going on in Benin zone, in Kaduna zone, or whatever zone else exists for the CBN?
That's correct. Every zone of a central bank has its bricketing arrangement.
Okay, so it's not that they will all converge in Abuja, the headquarters?
No, it's decentralized, or at least by zones.
Okay, I'm just wondering if we are finding this here. I hope they're paying attention to the other zones, obviously now, even if they were not before.
I believe that the central bank management will be taking necessary action, precautionary action. Because if it could be happening in Ibadan, it can as well be happening anywhere
else. Okay. And what has been your observation about the BVN? Have Nigerians been you think we've embraced it? I
Yes.
thought the deadline was June 1, but they're not being very strict about it in the banks just yet.
I think the response is very, very encouraging. Very encouraging on the part of the banks and on the customers' part too. People
Yes.
are coming out. Just like any other thing, you should expect more turnout towards the end, which I believe is June 30th.
Yes.
So towards the end of the month, you should expect more turnout. Because people tend to do things
At the last
rush,
minute.
At the last minute.
Yes.
That I can envisage that. So we advise the banks to make sure that they put necessary facility, necessary arrangements,
Yeah.
increase their capacity so that they'll be able to accommodate the envisaged
rush.
last minute rush that
Okay.
will happen.
Will we get a card like the PVC card?
We will get a card, but I don't think it will be immediate. You will definitely get identification number, but the card will not be immediate.
So, but with our number, we'll be able to proceed.
No problem.
But this deadline, June 30, that doesn't envisage Nigerians living outside the country. I mean, can a contractual agreement between a customer and a bank coerce a person to have to fly in to the country to do BVN or otherwise have no access to his account? I'm sure the banks will look at that issue again. What do you think?
They should look at it again because they cannot compel their customers to the diaspora customers to come into the country.
Yes.
Just because they have to take their biometrics. Don't forget that at the beginning of account opening,
Yes.
in the contract, it was never said that if you are outside, I'm going to block your account or you will not be able to operate your account until you come back into
Yes.
the country. In any case, what I expect the banks to do is to, well, flag the account after June 30. The account of those who have not complied
Yes.
could be flagged, restriction could be placed on it, such that if the person now shows up in the bank and regularize, by doing his BVN, then they will release his account for operation. And for those guys in diaspora, over 80% of them, I believe, are not operating their accounts
here
right now. So whether they are around or not around won't make much difference.
Okay, but in saying that they will restrict access to those accounts, it doesn't mean they will seize my money.
No, it won't. They won't seize your money. In fact, it's just like, again, those who are living abroad. You know, if you have not operated your account for 6 months, automatically the account will go into dormancy.
Okay.
It's just like that. Whenever you revive the account, then
and your money will still be there, but it's dormant.
It's dormant.
Okay.
So if even if they place restriction on your account, so long as you are not in the country, as you are not in the country to operate the account, your money will be saved intact, and if you earn its normal interest until you are able to come to the country and
to regularize
it.
Okay. Now, just thinking about this BVN and a card like the PVC as well, that already has all our biometrics. You know, I'm getting a little tired of every time going out to do biometrics. We've done biometrics with PVC, we've done biometrics with BVN. You know, is there a way that the banks can allow this BVN to be used in a more general way, so that it's a kind of identification for everybody across board? You know, if your bank can identify you, what better identification do we need? I mean, I don't know if you see that argument that I'm trying to make.
Angela, I quite agree with you on that. That has always been my thought process too, because I've been wondering why Bankers Committee and the Central Bank wouldn't allow other regulators like the PENCOM,
the Pensions Commission,
National Pensions Commission, and NICOM and other regulators to key into the platform and use one single identification platform for all Nigerians. Because I'm aware very soon pensioners will be asked to come and do biometrics.
Yes.
Maybe the insurance policy holders or the stock holders too will be called upon one day to come and do. Why do we have to have several silos of biometrics?
Yes.
I think that is that's the point.
Pensioners must have a bank account necessarily to receive their pension.
Yes.
It would be brilliant if they could just use the BVN card
Because it's a unique identification to each individual.
Individual.
If you come to open your RSA form or fill a pension form or your stock card, I ask for your unique identification number, your BVN number.
Yes.
It sorts out everything.
Yes, and the PENCOM just knows that this amount is going to this person with this number.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I mean, I think it's a matter of continuing to talk. I'm sure the Bankers Committee too would have heard all kinds of suggestions and opinions, and going forward, possibly they will be reviewing and reviewing and reviewing. I wonder if everybody is happy with the biometric thing in the bank, though, doing that BVN. I just wonder.
Yeah, people are happy. People are okay with it. I've not heard any complaint. Initially, people were agitated. They thought it was going to be a kind of punitive or something that we expose them.
They want to know how much I have.
Yes, but so far so good. People are turning out, are responding very well, and the banks too are doing well, because I receive a lot of alerts. I see a lot of enlightenment. They are doing well, and I hope, from my estimation, by the end of this month, we should be able to achieve up to 70 to 80% of the banking populace.
Okay, BVN registration. Yes. Right. The other issue I wanted us to look at, the CBN rule on foreign exchange limit on Naira debit cards. The rule is a bit confusing. It's fixed at $50,000 a year or $300 a day by ATM withdrawal. Now, people are confused. Is it 50,000 Naira per customer or per card? Because people are rushing out now, applying for more debit cards with the hope that if I have 6 debit cards, then I will be entitled to $50,000 times 6 in a year.
They are making a mistake.
Okay.
What the bank is saying is 300 per withdrawal per day. So even if you have several cards, you can only withdraw on that account the sum of equivalent of $300 a day.
So what are you saying, that if I have if I have 2 cards, one from EcoBank, one from UBA, am I going to get 50,000 on each card?
Because you have 2 different cards from 2 different banks.
Accounts.
You see, this thing is all about people beating the system.
Because you know, and that's what I want to look at. I see a loophole here.
It's a loophole. It's a loophole. Because when this thing first started, I used that product when I was in Canada, and I found out that this thing is very tempting. If care is not taken, some people will want to abuse this system, because it was possible for me to take, I think my ATM limit in Canada was $1,000.
Okay.
So if I load my account, for example, here with say 3 million, and then in Canada I start taking 1,000 per day for the next 2 weeks.
Yes.
That's a lot of money. I could get myself about say 15,000 or more.
Oh, and on the card you are getting it at bank rate.
Yes, and another thing that to notice that the rate is slightly higher than the bank rate, but not as high as the black market rate, the parallel market rate. So it's tempting. If I made 30,000 in 2 weeks, drawing my 30,000 in 2 weeks, I could sell the 30,000
on the black market
and then make a spread and then continue the round tripping.
That's what they call round tripping.
Yeah, and I'm sure some people have been caught. That was why the bank tried to introduce the limit on the daily withdrawal.
Do you think it will work?
Well, it will work. It will, because don't forget, it's a computer programmed thing. So once you have taken your $300 and you try to take another, except you use your other bank account.
I got a text message from my bank saying that don't get it confused. This 50,000 is per customer.
Sure.
Not per card.
Sure.
So I thought, well, how will you guys know if I have another account in another bank? Because you are assuming I will only get one card in this bank A. What if I go to bank B, bank C, get cards there too, and that's another 50-50? Will the central bank, will I be caught? Is it something illegal?
It's nothing illegal, because the $50,000 we are talking about, don't forget, it's per year.
Yes, for the year.
It's for the year.
Yes.
So it's about 300 per day.
Yes.
If you have the time of now going every day with say about 5 bank cards in your hands, to take 1,000.
Then you must be up to up to no good.
1,500,
Yes.
and the next day you don't do anything. You go to and then take, you know.
But this rule does not prevent you from doing normal business. If you want to take money abroad, there is a normal process to take your money abroad.
No. It doesn't. It doesn't disturb you. That is, you can either do transfer, you can do letters of credit, you can do all sorts of foreign exchange trades financing
That are legal.
Do
they have limits as well? Is there a limit to how much money you can trade with abroad, send abroad?
No, there is no limit per se, but it's just a question of documentation.
Right. What do you mean documentation?
Like if you want to open an LC, there are forms you have to fill, there are documents, your pro forma invoice, your parking list, marine insurance, and all those documents.
There must be a reason for you to want this foreign
transfer
exchange.
this money. Exactly.
So you can't just transfer foreign exchange without a reason.
No, you can't.
Whether it's school fees for your children or for business, there must be a stated reason.
If it's a school fees payment, that's under Form A arrangement.
Yes.
Non-valid for SP. You need to show your children's school fees, admission letter, and stuff like that. And then there's a form you have to fill. Then they will remit to the account specified in the bill, school bill. Or it could be a draft, foreign draft, or anything. So in any case, there must be justification. There must be documentation for those ones. Those ones, there are no limits like the direct cash withdrawals.
All these checks is a result of new anti-money laundering laws, or the fight against terrorism and all that. It's all connected, isn't it?
It's all connected. They're all connected. That's what we call smurfing and layering. And, you know, these are anti-money laundering, which is my specialty, and I believe it's a discussion of another day.
Yes.
When you say smurfing or layering, you know, we know in Nigeria that 10,000 is the amount that we should be reported, $10,000 or equivalent of dollars in euro and other currencies should be reported when you do foreign transfers or inflows.
Yes.
But for some people, because they want to avoid being reported, they want to avoid that threshold, hitting that threshold.
So that the authorities don't see
the transaction
volume of business they're doing.
Yes. So they do piecemeal transaction just below the threshold transaction, like
97,
99, 98, 95, and they do it in several places. So that's
smurfing. You guys, you are trained to detect when someone is a smurfer. I've got to bring you back. That's an interesting topic. Thank you very much, Mr. Oyenuga, for coming on the program today. Thank you. And that's it for this week. I'm Angela Ajetomobi. Thank you for watching.